Hello, thank you for joining us today. We're just raising awareness during this Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm on today by myself talking about the impact of our thoughts on our emotional and our mental health. Many people get stuck in negative thinking patterns, and it could be caused by depressive symptoms, anxiety, traumatic experiences, or other sort of exigent circumstances. So, one thing we know about negative thinking as it relates to mental health is that if we don't do something to disrupt our negative thinking patterns, we could find ourselves oftentimes going around in circles. Think of it almost like this. Imagine you have a desire to get somewhere, and you want to get there rather quickly, and you're running with all of your might, and you're busy, and you're exerting all kinds of energy. And you think that your effort should have dropped you off at your destination by now, but you're still stuck in the same place. You look down, and while you've been running on a treadmill with lots of activity, but really going nowhere. This is what our negative thinking does to us. And until we step off the treadmill or off the hamster wheel, we won't be able to move forward with our dreams or our goals or our ambitions or something as simple as our night's sleep or our work decisions. And the list can go on and on. So we call our thinking patterns our train of thought because we how we think oftentimes determines where we'll go. And while many of us want to go somewhere, our train of thought is heading us into a completely different direction than where we desire to go. So what do we do? We've all heard the saying, the same old thinking, the same old results. So one thing that we have to do is we have to challenge some of our negative thinking patterns. While our negative thoughts may not go away, we at least have to be able to label, recognize, and name them so that awareness would create an avenue for alternative thinking patterns. So let me share with you three negative thinking patterns or trains of thought that I feel many individuals, especially those suffering with anxiety, trauma, depression, and grief, can slip into. The first two are cognitive distortions, and there's so many that we can't really address. But the first is this idea of all or nothing thinking. It's thinking I have to do things perfectly because anything less than perfect is a failure. Perfectionism starts to begin to seep in. You see things in black and white categories. So if your performance falls short of perfect, you see yourself as a complete failure, and you don't make any room for any growth or any improvement. This next one that we'll talk about just briefly is disqualifying the positive. You dismiss positive experiences by insisting that they either don't count for some reason or another. In this way, you can maintain a negative belief that is often contradicted by your everyday experiences. This last one that I want to talk about is rumination, and this is a big one. Ruminating is simply repeatedly going over a thought or a problem without completion. See, when people are depressed, the themes of rumination are typically centered around being inadequate or feeling worthless. And the repetition and the feelings of inadequacy then raise anxiety, and the anxiety then interferes with solving the problem. And then this then spirals and then begins to lead to depression. So rumination really emotionally hijacks us and intensifies our negative feelings, especially making us feel like we're prisoners to our thoughts. So how do we tackle rumination? One of the ways that we tackle rumination is to think to ourselves, listen, are you ruminating on something that is out of control? If so, ask yourself whether or not dwelling on it is helping the matter or whether it's getting you just simply worked up. Even if your rumination is based in reality, and this is one of the things that I try to teach my clients, think about the worst thing that could happen. And if you can handle that scenario, which most of them usually can handle it, it works to calm the mental stress that is contributing to their symptoms and their lack of progress. You can also do something like schedule your anxiety. Give yourself a few moments to worry and a few minutes to ruminate. And then when the time is up, you can then move on. I want to share with you a great resource. There's a great resource that I read a while ago. It's written by David Burns. It's the Feeling Good Handbook, in which he lists 10 ways to untwist your thinking. We don't have time to go through them in this 5 minutes, but a few of them that I love is this idea of countering the distortion or examining the evidence. He talks about an experimental technique where you can conduct an experiment to test the validity of your negative thoughts. He talks about also defining terms in this book, where if you label yourself inferior or a fool or a loser, you can ask yourself, well, what are the definitions of a fool? And you'll start to feel better when you see that there's no such thing as a fool or a loser, or that you don't fit into these categories. He has others, but those are some of my favorites, and I hope that may have been helpful to you. Listen, this Mental Health Awareness Month, we just want to come out and we would just want to raise awareness as it relates to mental health. And I want you to know that if you struggle with your negative thinking patterns, if you need help, there's no need for you to suffer in silence or to suffer alone. Get help. Many people get stuck in negative thinking patterns, and I don't want us to get stuck there. And so if you need help, make sure you seek help. I'm going to share a few resources that you can access in case you do need help. If you need it, make sure you seek it. Have a wonderful day.